All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be doing a preview and prediction for the Cure Bowl, a ranked matchup between Troy and UTSA. The spread is a pick'em, and it's going to be on the first day of bowl games, Friday, December 16th, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN from Exploria Stadium in Orlando, Florida. And this is the first meeting ever between these schools. Looking at this Troy offense, Nick, you knew they would have a strong defense coming onto the year, but you didn't exactly know what this offense would do to counterbalance this football team. But I think they performed very well this season, which led to them having, a conference championship winning season, 26.2 points per game. Watson, 62% completion rating at quarterback, 2,700 yards, 13 touchdowns, 10 picks. Gunnar Watson, I think, played pretty admirably this year, 225 yards per game. Didn't exactly protect the football all that well, but this passing attack, a season ago, they struggled with two different quarterbacks. They were not really able to find a stride in the passing game. I think this year they're a little bit better. And then you look at a running game that's also been pretty, respectable as well. 121.6 yards per game. Kimani Vittle, 1,059 yards, 9 touchdowns. And DK Billingsley, another 656 and 8 touchdowns, have formed a pretty respectable duo for Troy here. And they also have a phenomenal pass catcher in Tez Johnson. They dish it out pretty well in this passing game. Tez has 52 recs for 823 yards and 4 touchdowns. Rajay Johnson's right behind him, 672 yards on 34 grabs and 6 touchdowns, almost 20 yards per catch. Deshaun Stratemeyer, 38 for 491. This is an offense, Nick, that I think performed pretty well this year. I think that's exactly what this football team needed to succeed, and I think that's exactly what they got.
This offense did live up to the expectations of the preseason. I do like this offense, doesn't jump off the page at you, but they do have some solid players who can produce. Gunnar Watson is a solid quarterback, kind of can control the game when he needs to. Yes, the turnover was a little high with 10 interceptions, but overall I think he's a solid quarterback considering what the level that Troy plays at. This Troy team won a conference championship this year. Solid win for them. They get to play in the Cure Bowl against UTSA. I like this offense. Vidal, obviously leading the way, over 1,000 yards rushing, 9 touchdowns for him on the ground, 5.1 yards per carry. He picks up a lot of yards each carry. 5.1 is a solid thing to have per attempt. And then when you look at Billingsley, who's 4.9 right behind him, this is a good duo they have. These two guys together, they split the load pretty, close to evenly here with Vidal getting a little bit more touches. I like Billingsley as a good number 2 back. Solid on the ground, good speed, 8 scores for him. Tez Johnson leads the way with 52 catches, 823 yards receiving for him, 15.8 yards per grab. Rajay Johnson as well. He's a solid wide receiver with 672 yards receiving, nearly 20 yards per catch, and the 6 scores for him leading the way in terms of touchdowns. This is a good offense. Like I said, they're kind of a quiet offense. They don't jump off the page at you with a 26.2 points per game, but I think this is a good offense that has a decent way of going. Yes, the offensive line's a little weak. They do allow a lot of sacks, but I do like this offense.
40 sacks allowed, 119th in college football. It's certainly a very disappointing number to have. I do think that Austin Stidham at tackle is having a pretty solid year, but outside of that, the rest of the unit certainly struggles. That leads you to a UTSA offense that is phenomenal, almost 39 points per game, 486 yards per contest. Frank Harris has come a long way in his career. A couple of years ago, he was not that great, but him and Trev Traylor, they've had a very phenomenal output here the last 2 seasons. Back-to-back CUSA championships, 71% completion rate for him, 3,865 yards, 31 touchdowns, 7 picks, almost 300 yards per game for Frank Harris. He's also adding 9 touchdowns and 588 yards on the ground. This is a guy that might potentially, opt to the portal for bigger and better opportunities at the end of the year, but I think right now the focus is going to be winning this game. As a team, they have 3 guys of 300-plus rushing yards. Brendan Brady did not play in the last game. They're hoping to have him back, 700 yards and 9 touchdowns right there. Kavarian Barnes, 713 yards and 6 touchdowns, over 6 yards per touch. This is a running game that certainly complements this passing game very well. I think my favorite part about this offense, though, is they're absolutely loaded at pass catcher. Production is absolutely absurd. DeCorian Clark has not played in weeks. I'm not sure what his status will be. But Joshua Cephas and Zachary Franklin, 2 seniors. These guys have pretty identical production. 86 grabs for Franklin, 1,100 yards and 14 touchdowns. Cephas, 1 more reception, a little less yardage, though, 985, and then 6 touchdowns. This is a heck of an offense, Nick. They also have a pretty ridiculous side on the interior offensive line. You're looking at, guys who are 6'5", 320. They're in that range. This is a very big offensive line. Pass blocking has been very ideal this year for UTSA. What are the expectations here for this offense as they face probably the toughest defense they've seen all year?
This is a great offense. I absolutely love the speed and how this offense plays. This is a good offense last year. They seem to get better this season. They're putting it all together here. 38.7 points per game, 486 total yards of offense per game. They lost to Corian Clark to an ACL tear a month and a half ago, but even losing him, this offense has still kept up the pace. Sakari Franklin, 1,100 yards receiving, 14 touchdowns for him. Joshua Keepus, almost 1,000 yards receiving, 6 touchdowns for him. I love the balance they have at running back as well. Frank Harris can run the ball, nearly 600 yards rushing for him. Brady Barnes, Brady, of course, a little banged up, but he's got 700 yards on the ground. Barnes also 715 yards on the ground, 6 scores for him. Harris is really coming to his own as a passer, though, this season. 71.1% completion percentage, 31 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Getting better about protecting the ball and finding those passing lanes to create those touchdowns. 31 touchdowns is certainly a lot of number for him. Nearly 4,000 yards passing, 3,800 to be exact. Impressive numbers from Harris. I love the speed he has, and he's a bit of a dual threat quarterback. I really like the options they have. I also like, they also have some solid moves at tight ends. Cardenas as well is not a bad tight end, nearly 400 yards receiving, 14.5 yards per catch, 2 scores for him. Dan Dishman as well gets involved a little bit, 134 yards receiving for him at tight end. This is a great offense that has so many different ways to hit you on the ground, hit you through the air. I love the balance here. I expect this offense to be able to put up a decent amount of points again. What is a really good Troy defense we're going to touch on in a second.
Look at a Troy defense that is just phenomenal. They had a 7-game stretch of allowing under 360 yards before Coastal Carolina put up a lot of garbage time numbers. 17.5 points per game allowed. You look at 325 total yards per game allowed, and they really get things done on the ground. 117 yards per contest given up. Carlton Marshall, incredibly undersized, but this is one of the nation's best linebackers. 121 tackles, plays with a chip on his shoulder, plenty of physicality. I think from an individual playmaking standpoint, they're all over for this defense. Of course, it starts with Marshall in the middle. You have T.J. Jackson coming off the edge with 15.5 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, pair of forced fumbles. Richard Jebnor, 10 TFL of his own, 6.5 sacks. He's also forced some fumbles. And then Javon Solomon, he was an incredible freshman for him a season ago. This is actually his 4th year, though. 44 tackles, 7.5 TFL, 4.5 sacks of his own. They're pretty productive up front. Will Clough as well. This is a very impressive defensive tackle. Shaquille Brown, they have some size on the interior, and I think it's really important to note because, they're facing, an offensive line on the interior that has plenty of size. So this is a very good defense, especially on the front 7. Gets even better in the secondary, though. They don't allow too much at all. They got 2 great coverage guys. Reedy Stewart, he has been phenomenal for them from his safety spot, or corner spot, rather. He's been an elite defender with 3 picks and 8 pass breakups. Top to bottom, Nick, this is just a phenomenal defense. They do not break too much. Guys like Keyshawn Smith as safety, Craig Solcombe, they have a variety of defenders they get out there and on the field, and TJ Harris being another one at corner. It just seems like they're very well coached. They do not break often, and they just make things very tough for their opponent, which makes this such a good, compelling matchup.
This is a fantastic defense. Great defense in the Sun Belt. Look at a guy like TJ Harris at safety, 63 total tackles on the season, 3rd on the team, 4.5 sacks for him. He gets after the quarterback from that position, sometimes plays corner. He can get really after the quarterback. I love the sack numbers from this team, especially on the interior. 5.5, 4.5. These guys are putting up numbers. Jabarner as well, 6 tackles for him, 6 sacks for him at linebacker. Marshall, of course, leading the way with the tackles, 121 tackles on the season. Slocum as well, 96 total tackles for him, getting close to 100 at safety. They have great balance in the front 7 and great balance in the secondary. A lot of these guys, can play where they need to play in the secondary. They move them around a little bit. I love the size as well in the interior. Like you said, these guys are strong at defensive tackle, and they got great edge rushing presence as well. Look at a guy like Antonio Showers. Doesn't get a whole lot of love, but he's got 3 sacks on the season and 19 tackles for him as well. They have great balance on the interior and all over the front 7. I love how they're able to get after the quarterback, create pressure, and that's the key for me here. You got to get pressure on the quarterback against UTSA. If you allow their quarterback to sit in the pocket and sling the ball, he's going to pick you apart considering the depth they have at wide receiver. I need to see this Troy defense get after the quarterback, put a ton of pressure on it, and I believe they'll be able to do that considering what they've been able to do so far this season.
Now you look at a Roadrunners defense. Last year was a big problem despite winning the conference, and they did it again with a pretty much a little bit lesser of a unit. They still have some great individual players, though. Jamal Ligdon at linebacker, 83 tackles, 4.5 tackle for loss. Trey Moore, he stepped up as their best as rushing presence as a freshman. They lost a lot of guys last year. They were making plays off the edge. He's got 12.5 TFL, 6 sacks, handful of fumbles, some pass breakups. He's did a little bit of everything for him. I think Nick Booker Brown as well, a sophomore. He's really stepped up on the interior for them. Production isn't exactly eye-popping, but this is a guy that provides plenty of impact, as does Tremaine Bell and Brandon Brown, who's 6'2", 305. So they got some guys in the middle that can make some plays. This is a defense that gives up a lot of yards, though, Nick. They're not exactly great against the run. They're towards the bottom of college football and, giving up 10-plus yard passing plays. Corey Mayfield, he's having a heck of a season at cornerback. 60 tackles for him, 12 pass breakups, 3 picks, 15 plays on the ball. That's one of the better numbers you'll see in college football. I think this is a defense that has some, great individual players. You can even look at Troy Fortune at cornerback. He's a good player as well for them. Joe Evans has been a respectable run defender on the defensive line. I think they have a great rotation of guys on the defensive line. But this is a defense that I thought would play better last year in their bowl game. They played San Diego State. That offense is completely awful, and they got, blistered in that game, Nick. And now you're turning around here. And of course, you're not going to compare one game to another, but this is a defense that's certainly let down at times. And I think this is an opportunity for them to certainly let down, especially if their offense has some struggles, especially early in that game.
This is a good defense. It's not a great defense. They weren't so great last year. They had a lot of question marks coming into this season, but I think they have performed well at times. Yes, they're poor against the pass, giving up 250 plus yards per game allowed through the air. If you're a Roadrunners fan, but there's some individual talent here. Look at a guy like Clifford Chatham as well. 68 total tackles for him, 14 pass breakups, 4 interceptions on the year for him. He's been having a great season at safety. And then again, you highlight these guys in the secondary that are not bad. Mayfield Jr., 12 pass breakups, 3 interceptions for him, plus the 2 sacks, 59 total tackles, having a good season. Trey Moore, 6 sacks, leading the way. I love him at linebacker. Very underrated linebacker in this country. I like what he can do. Get after the quarterback. The 6 sacks is a very impressive number. Ligon as well, good linebacker, leading the way with 85 total tackles. Good team leader, nice locker room presence. I like him on the field. The numbers across the board, though, are just a little bit down, a little disappointing. You want to see higher tackle numbers out of some of these guys. It really drops off after the top 3 here. You kind of see that there is a bit of a gap there. And the secondary gets beat at times, certainly over the top. They got to be able to contain Troy if they want to have a good chance to win this bowl game. Like you said, they played a bad offense last year and struggled against them. They got to be able to find a way to contain this Troy offense and limit the damage on defense. Bend, don't break. Will they be able to do that? I'm not entirely sure.
That leads us to the final thoughts and the prediction on this game. Keys to this contest, I think for Troy, a balanced offense seems pretty likely against this defense. And I think they've been pretty successful this year at being able to do that, especially against Coastal Carolina last week. They had a lot of big plays. And disrupt up front, I think for Troy, get Frank Harris off his platform. And that's going to be the biggest key for UTSA is protect him. This is a very feisty pass rush. They're very deep themselves on the D line. The wide receivers must win on the outside. Their playmaking has really saved this offense at times. Made the job really easy for Frank Harris. And it's going to be even easier here against a very good front seven if those guys can make strong-handed plays. I'm going to go Troy in this one, Nick, 32-26. I really want to pick UTSA because I love Frank Harris. I love those pass catchers. The offense is great, very exciting. But, we've learned in the past, great defenses really seem to have numbers on these offenses, and I think it's going to be no different here.
I think this is the most exciting group of 5 matchup we have. Great bowl game to kick off the earlier slate. I love this matchup. I think it's a very balanced matchup between 2 teams that won their conference, had good years, 2 top 25 teams. I'm also going to take Troy just because I believe Troy has the potential here to get after the quarterback. I think if they can get after Harris, kind of disrupt him, find him uncomfortable early on, I think that's the key to success because, yes, UTSA has incredible wide receivers, but if you can't get the ball to them, there's not much you can do there. Troy, find great balance, switch up the passing, throwing options, run a little bit here and there. I think they have a real good chance here to put up some points. I expect a close game. I think this will be, comes down to the wire. Troy should go on a nice drive to end off the game and walk this one off. This is a very exciting bowl game, and I cannot wait to see how this one plays out.
Picking them to hold UTSA to under 30. That's what the pick's going to be. Not many confidence points on this one, though, but a great way to kick off Bowl Mania. As always, Nick, I appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, very excited for this one. Confidence points will be low, but this should be a fun matchup. Like I said, 2 top 25 teams, conference winners in the earlier slate, second day of Bowl Mania. I'm excited for this one.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.